everybody. Welcome to Dungeon of Deadly Delights. I'm, of course, Rob DiLauro, and with me, as always, is Miss Holly Interlandi. Holly, what is going on?
Cheers. I'm back in my main room for this episode. I'm not sure why. I think I wanted to experiment.
No, it looks good. Like, I think I like the the dichotomy of you like switching from room to room to room. It's just like, where's she going to be this next?
There's a little more room to relax out here. I'm not like shoved up against some comic book boxes. So.
For sure. So the world is still messed up, and
I don't think that's gonna change anytime soon.
No. I mean, and me and Holly are still like Nero playing the fiddle. So, as Yep. So
but anybody who watches this show should understand like how we feel about stuff.
Yeah, we're not gonna get into
it. If you don't like it,
I think you come to us to get break free from that kind of stuff, and unless it actually topically comes into the conversation. Like for example, when I talked to Guinevere Turner for our Most Wanted episode, the fact that something like American Psycho can play into our political conversation now is really kind of terrifying. You know what I mean? Yeah, that was the kind of stuff we talked about, which, by the way, you can see the Dungeon of Deadly Delights podcast with Guinevere Turner right now on Spotify and Twitcher and everywhere podcasts can be heard. And we do have a new guest coming up for the podcast for episode 4, and we're just trucking along with it. And I'm just really excited, where the podcast is going already. It's pretty wild. We're going to get into our next topic here. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of great things to come out of this particular subgenre. Obviously, a couple blockbusters. And honestly, we're just inundated in a world of the supernatural, of ghosts. All these, like ghost reality shows, all this and all that. It really is just a huge, catalog of, I don't know. Dare I say some nonsense and some actually like really good storytelling.
Well, I think the thing with ghosts is that a lot of people believe they actually exist, whereas when it comes to like werewolves or alien mutants or like soul-sucking zombie things, it's harder to convince people that they're a thing.
Yeah.
But I would love to believe in ghosts. I have never seen anything that would cause me to believe in ghosts, but I would love to.
Me neither.
I know people who claim they've seen things. I'm like, that's great for you. Still don't believe in ghosts, but I'm open to it. I am. I think there's always that sense of paranormal that ghosts are more of a possibility than say, plant monsters, for example. Maybe there may be a reason that ghost films feel a little bit different than other ones just because they're, they can be done in ways that feel like an honest investigation.
Well, I think ghost stories are also a lot more personal too than a lot of horror films.
Yeah, they're usually like mysteries, and the mystery is always has to be unraveled because you have to figure out why the ghost is there and what you have to do to get it to be at rest or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Like it either has to do with the, with the apparition's revenge or its redemption, or just trying to like maybe even save you, like in your own life or whatever it is. But there's always some agenda there that's fascinating. You know what I mean? So yeah, I can see how ghost films are probably one of the most popular of the subgenres. And sorry guys, we're not talking about Ghostbusters, but yes, it is very, very, very important.
I love Ghostbusters. Love it.
I do too. There's really not much else to bring to the table.
Yeah, it's one of those movies where it's like, what more can you really say? It's been tackled to death.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to go on to one that is probably one of my favorite cult films of all time, and it still hurts me because this movie should have tore up the box office when it came out. It is relentlessly entertaining. It never gets old, never gets boring. and it's just super, super fun to watch. It's like one of the most awesome movies I've ever seen. And of course, I'm going to be talking about the Frighteners, Peter Jackson's The Frighteners, which, if you weren't aware, actually was supposed to be a Tales from the Crypt vehicle before it became a feature film. Like, it was supposed to be, I don't know if it was supposed to be an episode of Tales from the Crypt. I think they were going to do like an offshoot, kind of like, Demon Knight or Bordello of Blood or something like that. And then they decided to make it its own feature. And my God, a lot of people talk about, when people talk about Michael J. Fox, obviously the go-to is talking about Marty McFly. But his portrayal of Frank Bannister is probably one of his best roles. He's charming, he's funny, he has the potential to be a killer, and you don't necessarily know, you know what I mean? There's a fine line there. Everything he brings to the table, in that performance, it's just amazing and awesome. So basically, if you guys aren't familiar with the Frighteners, quite simply, there's kind of like this side plot where Frank Bannister may have killed his wife, and he actually has these supernatural experiences where he doesn't even just like feel ghosts around him or whatever. They're actually right there. And he has conversations with them, and they live in his house, and like he's honestly like the ultimate Ghostbuster, but he's also at its core a flim-flam man. So like he like convinces other people that they have ghosts in their house, and meanwhile he's got the ghosts that are friends with him like doing wild shit in their house, so they go, oh, like like you were the right guy to call. You've got this whole, other line with, this other, subplot with the Grim Reaper, and, a bunch of people are getting like, numbers scrawled on their heads, and, they die instantly. And, then you've got this other character with, played by Dee Wallace. And, it's just this thing.
The legendary Dee Wallace.
Yeah. Oh my God. I know that when she was doing this movie, she was going through a lot in her family and stuff, and she said she just put so much into this role because like it felt good for her to be able to get all that out, all that energy out in this character. And I mean, if we lived in a perfect world, not only would this movie be a hit, but Dee Wallace would have been nominated for something. So Dee Wallace is supposed to be playing this like this really timid woman. She takes care of her mother, and she used to be a nurse in this whole situation where these two crazed young killers, kind of like a Mickey and Mallory, like went through this this hospital and just started like just icing people like left and right. Spoiler alert, it was actually Dee Wallace and her boyfriend, played by Jake Busey, and the Grim Reaper is actually Jake Busey's ghost. This movie is fucking cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on.
This movie's fucking cool. And then you got Jeffrey Combs, who's playing like this FBI agent, and then it turns out that like he's into some weird like supernatural shit, and like it's crazy. This fucking movie is absolutely insane.
Jeffrey Combs can do no wrong.
Right. And great makeup effects, wonderful makeup effects. John Astin, who plays this character, the judge, he like all these ghosts kind of look ethereal, but you can see the actual like rotten stuff going on, like through that, you know what I mean? So his like jawbones like half coming off, and he's all decayed and shit. Really cool fucking makeup effects, and everything about this movie just works so well. And again, like I said, I'm really just bummed that this movie didn't do as well as it should have. This thing should have been a massive hit.
Well, I'm going to be predictable and pick another foreign film. But this film is a ghost story that just does everything right. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, if you haven't seen it, it's an arguably gimmicky story about a blind woman who undergoes eye surgery so she can see. And it's sort of a miracle surgery because she's never been able to see in her whole life.
Yeah.
And so she doesn't know what it's like to see. And so, whatever she sees, she's going to assume is normal because, it's like, oh, okay, this is just what people see. I think a lot of the reason I connected to it at the beginning was because she couldn't focus because her eyes were so new and everything was so blurry and she couldn't see things clearly. And, I don't know if, being really, really horribly blind, like in a debilitating way, I was like, oh, I know just what that feels like.
Oh my God, your eyes just turned into pinholes like a cartoon. That was wild, man.
My eyes are special. But yeah, eventually, she starts seeing strange things, things that other people don't seem to see. And she eventually realizes that she's been seeing ghosts, and she launches an investigation along with her psychologist of, where she got these cornea implants and what could have happened to this person and if they saw ghosts too. And of course, like a lot of ghost films, it's a big investigation of the past, and there are big dramatic moments of catharsis and everything. And then the ending just burns you.
It's pretty wild.
Literally, like it's one of those things where, like, I disparage twist endings a lot, but that's because I feel like recently people feel the need to do a twist ending when there's really not one needed. Whereas in this case, it's just totally devastating.
Actually, I want to talk about another one that, when it comes to the supernatural genre or the ghost genre, this is probably one of the greatest films of all time. No question about it. And really, aside from, like a few moments with like Mary McCormick, who plays his wife, or, some flashback scenes, and, Sam Jackson, kind of like, jumping in from here to there. I mean, it really is kind of a one-man performance when it comes to John Cusack, and 1408 is just a fucking masterpiece. I mean, there's really no warts about that movie that you can talk about. So basically, I love how it plays into, I love the idea of when somebody has like a certain profession or something, like say for example, like, I've been in film for 10 years, you know what I mean? And if I was like putting out all this really positive energy, but deep down I actually fucking kind of hated it, like this is kind of like the deal with John Cusack's character when it comes to his thoughts on the supernatural. Like he, puts out these books and he makes money. He does, pretty well for himself, going to all these different, like haunted places and stuff like that. But he doesn't believe it anymore because, first of all, he's never fucking seen anything. You know what I mean? So, in that regard, he's kind of like a shyster. But I think, deep down, when it comes to the storyline of this character, and what happens with his family and stuff like that, like, he's also kind of lost faith. So he's just kind of hollow all across the board. You know what I mean? When it comes to his soul and stuff. So when he fights tooth and nail to get into this, into this Dolphin Hotel, this really gorgeous hotel, and there just happens to be this one room, 1408, that, there's been quite a few, like suicides and, accidental murders and all this stuff. So he gets into this room, and like I said, it is a one-man performance, but, I mean, aside from just the scares alone, it really hits you at your core because you are seeing, kind of like the construction of a man's story, of, how he lost his faith, through the death of his daughter, which is, kind of like the through line for this entire thing. It's just so fucking magnificent, man. The fact, that they were able to like take a room and like you see a painting, like on the wall, and it's like, like an old ship or something, and then that water like comes into the room and he's like, basically drowning. I mean, the shit that they do in this movie is just like remarkable, turning the room cold, you know what I mean? And like, you just see ice everywhere, and oh boy, man, like they really, I mean, I'm not sure what the budget was on this movie, but it looks like it cost quite a bit. They really.
I'm sure you get the impression that whatever mental state the character who stays in that room is in, that's what dictates what happens, like spiritually in the room as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
And the other thing is, when it comes to this, like, hear his alarm clock go off. And if you can make the carpenter scary, you're doing a hell of a fucking job. Everything, like I said, everything about this just is so effective. And, again, we talk about perfect world scenario, which, evidently we're not even close to. In so many ways, like John Cusack should have, he should have been nominated for something when it comes to this movie. What's next on your list?
Well, we're gonna dive back a little bit more into super familiar territory here, and go with a film that, while a masterpiece in its own right, I would argue, an absolute masterpiece, unfortunately gave rise to the twist trend that I've been talking about.
Yeah.
The one where people tell a horror story and they feel like it can't just end. There has to be something unresolved. There has to be something, regardless of how contrived or stupid it is, which is kind of obnoxious and in a way, but I wouldn't change this film for the world to change that. And, the film I'm talking about obviously is The Sixth Sense, which has been, parodied, memed. It's dialogue and
I think once people knew that, like you were saying about the twist situation, I think once the twist of that movie, was finally revealed, I think it just kind of lost all significance at that point. Like, yeah, I don't need to fucking go back to that. I already know what's happening with that. You know what I mean?
But that's the mistake, because beyond the twist, this movie is impeccably crafted.
Yeah,
the acting is all just brilliant. Like there are no weak links in the cast. The atmosphere is just this steady, like, gray doldrums of just depression that you sort of, by the end of it, you're sort of feeling like, and you just want to feel some shred of hope. And it's just so effective that way. And, the cinematography, amazing. And it just, that's another thing that I think is tragic, is that the fact that The Sixth Sense was reduced to its twist, because it doesn't deserve that. It's so, like, I saw it, I think it was opening weekend in college in 1999. And I mean, some of you are probably super young and don't remember, but this movie was nominated for quite a few Oscars. Best picture, best actor, best supporting actor, best screenplay, best cinematography, and so this is not just a gimmicky horror flick.
No, well, there's a lot of things that a lot of people don't, take into account, for me, especially in my younger years, my mother, was a single mom, you know what I mean? So, even that, that aspect of, his relationship with Toni Collette, playing his mother in the movie, I mean, even that was so effective for me. It's in its supernatural aspects, to many degrees, it really is such a human story. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I also think it's a film that the less you know going in, the better it is, the more fun you'll have. I almost think it was an error to fill the trailers with the "I see dead people" line.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know that,
mm-hmm.
for the first half of the film, you're just as freaked out as everybody else.
Yeah. You know, and also, it, you know, like sometimes, you know, in ghost movies, like especially like, you know, in the 80s and stuff, like ghosts were kind of, you know, probably changed with like Patrick Swayze or whatever in passing. But you know, ghosts had a tendency to be seen as like, you know, these evil entities and stuff. And you know, the thing I loved about, you know, Cole's journey is that, you know, like none of these ghosts were evil. There was no evil intent. I want to, you know, murder, you know, the fucking, you know, the real, you know, or any of that stuff. You know, there's even a scene where he's in his school and, you know, like, you know, one of the apparitions is like, you know, I think, you know, like,
people, yeah,
like brushing his hair and stuff, like getting ready for this play. Awesome.
Well, and also the fact, like you call it a human ghost story, and that's absolutely true because the fact that these ghosts are, you know, they need to.
They're coming to him for help. Yeah.
Yeah, they need to accomplish something. They need something to happen before they can move on. You know, and of course, which of course, you know, plays into the twist and all that. But
what a twist! I mean, let's talk about that twist ending for, you know, like it could have been so heavy-handed that, you know, like spoilers if you haven't seen a movie from like 20 years ago, guys, but
everyone has. So.
Bruce Willis is fucking dead. Okay. But you know, when you look at that and, you know, like you start dismantling all that stuff, like even that is brilliant. You know, like when his wife is in the restaurant, you know, and, you know, you think she's picking up the check or, you know, whatever it is, you know, it's just so beautifully done. And then all it takes is just one fucking pearl red doorknob to just, you know, like send everything into like, oh, fuck, really?
Yeah.
Wow, you know? And honestly, like, you know, the other thing that, you know, like this thing has a lot of people that seen it have the, you know, like they just go, oh, I knew it in 10 minutes. You know what I mean? Like I saw Sixth Sense and I realized, you know, Bruce was dead in 5 minutes t-shirt or something. You know what I mean? Like,
well, and even if
bullshit.
You did,
nobody fucking knew that fucking ending, man. Nobody fucking knew.
Even if you claim you did, why disparage the rest of the movie like that? Because even if you know the twist, I went back to see that movie at least 3-4 more times. Mm-hmm. Not because of the twist ending, but because every segment, every scene, every piece of acting was just mesmerizing to me.
Like you said, yeah, that movie is a masterpiece, and it did so much for, you know, for the genre of ghost films, the box office, you know.
I mean, even just for a horror film to be nominated for so many Oscars,
reinvigorating the genre, you know.
It's a big deal, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and of course, Toni Collette's final scene in the car was just, you know, I mean, Toni Collette is just, she's the best. Mm-hmm. Again, as far as I'm concerned, she can do no wrong.
I agree. I definitely agree. I want to talk about one that is, you know, probably considered more of an independent, but this is a film that actually probably, you know, because, you know, she went off to, you know, become a mother, you know, after, you know, doing Reanimator, after, you know, like all the great films she did, you know, so she did get a, you know, like a second, you know, breath when it came to her career. Did You're Next, of course, and then the guys who actually, you know, brought You're Next, you know, into the ether when it comes to the genre, had crafted another film, which, I mean, this thing is a work of art. It's called We Are Still Here. I was blown away by this movie, because, you know, obviously, like, you know, you do have this, you know, story where this husband and wife, you know, they lose their son and they end up moving to this house in this New England town, and it's like really quaint, and, you know, like there's this you know, obviously like this history attached to the house, and this other family used to live there called the Dagmars, and, you know, they were you know, basically like conning the town, you know, like they were supposed to be burying their dead, but, you know, actually like, you know, burying dead coffins and stuff like that, and they were run out of town, you know, for their deceit and all this other stuff. Dare I say, like, you know, this, kind of like house that breathes scenario, that lives and breathes. I mean, just like, so much stuff. It almost seems strange to say that something's Lovecraftian, because I think, anything can kind of be, you know what I mean? Like anything could be Lovecraftian, but this definitely has like that Lovecraftian through line, within it. Yeah, and at its core, it really is like this haunted house story, and you're watching, something that's very slow burn, and you don't necessarily know what's going on, and then like you see glimpses and stuff of these ghosts of this Dagmar family that look all crispy and burnt and stuff, you know what I mean? But really no blood, no real violence or anything like that, and then this fucking ending comes out of nowhere where the townspeople, come into the house and they're trying to kill Barbara Crampton's character Anne and her husband, and the Dagmars, finally, come into the forefront, and then all of a sudden you got nothing but exploding heads, people's jaws getting ripped off. It's just a bloodbath, and you're like, where the fuck did this come from? You know what I mean? It's so instantaneous, man. You know what I mean? I mean, it is so beautifully crafted, that entire film. And I mean, it makes sense that it would continuously give Barbara Crampton the new career that she has. She's, I don't know how she's not doing like, I'm not going to say like, A-list acting or whatever, because I think the list thing is bullshit, but she definitely deserves a bigger star than she gets. She's really super talented, and she definitely knows her stuff when it comes to, just, different emotions, and she just brings it every single time.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. What's next on your list?
Well, we're gonna go back to foreign film territory, except in this case, the director and writer became a star. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be, all presumptive and say that when I saw this film, I knew he would be a star, even though I did. But I saw this film and I was like, okay, Guillermo del Toro is going to be an Oscar-winning director.
Yeah.
I
think deep down we all knew that. You know what I mean?
He's going to lay it down, and he's going to be one of the greats. Mm-hmm. And I feel like for a lot of people, that moment came with Pan's Labyrinth, which is fine. I mean, I like Pan's Labyrinth. I wasn't crazy about the ending, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was great. The movie I'm talking about, though, I believe has a lot of the same themes as Pan's Labyrinth, and I consider it to be not superior in structure, but more. At least it was more satisfying for me as a film, and that's The Devil's Backbone, which
the other fascinating thing about The Devil's Backbone too is that, like, it's such a small, heartfelt, film, like, very dark at its core, but like, it's got figures now and stuff. Like,
does it really? I've never seen a Devil's Backbone action figure.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, that's just testament to how far Guillermo's come.
Mm-hmm.
But this film, again, I saw it really early on. I think I was still living in Tennessee at the time, home from college for the summer in 2001 when it came out. Mm-hmm. And I was actually working in a movie theater, and I got to see movies for free. And the films I always picked were the obscure indie foreign ones, or the gay ones, or the the violent ones, or the whatever other people weren't watching.
The good stuff.
The good stuff, exactly. Wow, this film, it remains one of my favorites of all time. Mm-hmm. It has an uncanny sort of way of making symbolism the forefront of the story, in that it takes place during wartime in Spain, at an orphanage in the middle of nowhere. Like, this orphanage is seriously in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And the opening sequence of the book is a bomb from a plane dropping through a rainy sky and landing in the middle of the orphanage's like courtyard, just landing there, not exploding, just being a bomb.
Yeah.
And the kids having to deal with the fact, it's like, oh shit, that this was a thing that was going to kill people, and it's here just frozen in time in our courtyard. And
it's kind of like, it's also the potential destruction of innocence too. It's like, when it comes to like an atom bomb, like, there is no discrimination there. There's no age discrimination or anything. So
yeah, exactly. And that just sort of starts you off on this path where what you see on their surface is not going to be endgame, but essentially, you find out that the people at the orphanages, particularly the main boy Carlos, are haunted by the ghost of a young boy named Santi, who you later found out drowned in the basement.
We were talking about real cool design too. That Santi design is fucking amazing.
Yeah, it's really great. And especially because they take into account, for the design, they take into account the fact that he drowned. So he's always sort of surrounded by like hazy water and stuff.
Yeah.
And so there are all sorts of like terrifying sequences involving the ghost. But then, much in the way that Pan's Labyrinth plays out, you discover that the actual threat does not come from the new supernatural stuff at all. The ghost is not the dangerous party in this case. Yeah. It's the actual douchebag human beings who, or in this case, the one who wants to take all the gold from the orphanage owner's, false leg for himself, and he's just a horrible person, and ends up starting fires and burning down the orphanage, and there's just all of this horrible stuff because of a human being. After the human side of things has played out, the ghost is able to be at peace and get his revenge. But again, it's really, the presence of the ghost in this case is really more for atmosphere than anything else.
Yeah.
And that's not to downplay it at all, because it works perfectly. But this film, I couldn't, I came out of that theater, again, just like when I came out of the Eye, I came out of the theater being like, wow. And I went out and bought it, bam, right away.
We were talking about ghost design, and, not a great movie at all. But, when it comes to ghost design, like, this has to be brought up simply because of the design itself. And, of course, this is a, like a remake of a older William Castle film called 13 Ghosts. But man, people love this movie. And, and when you look at the design of the ghosts themselves, I can see why. There's a lot to love there, I think.
Well, William Castle was king of the gimmick as far as like the theater experience goes and his ghost goes. So as much as people like to disparage these remakes of his films, I feel like he would have been proud of them.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think so.
He was not, he didn't pretend to be, I'm making art. He was like, well, I'm making a movie about ghosts, and we're going to give people 3D glasses and put ghosts flying across the ceiling and whatever we can do to get people to talk about my movie, So.
Oh, I definitely agree. Yeah. But this is around the time of, turning, really classic horror films into, these, trying to make them these, these blockbuster films or whatever. I don't think 13 Ghosts did very well at the box office, but like, man, what a following it has. It's a really simple premise. You got a guy who lost his wife in a fire, and like he supposedly has this like dead uncle, and he moves his kids, one of them played by Shannon Elizabeth, you know, they move into this house that like has all these glyphs on it and stuff. Really cool looking house too, by the way. It's you know, it all looks kind of clear, you know what I mean? Like it's made of like, you know, some sort of glass or something, where you just know when they move into this place, it's just like, why did you agree to fucking go in this place? Like, dude, it looks like, you know, like some sort of lockup situation of some sort, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's right there in front of your face. It was just, you know, it was just a really cool idea, you know, like they wear these glasses, you know, they can actually, you know, see the apparitions going through the house and stuff like that. And, you know, certain areas, you know, like they kind of move and then they're blocked off. And, you know, obviously you don't want to be in the same room with these things because they're all fucking brutal fucking murderers, every single one of these things. You know, not like, oh, I'm having a heart attack. I mean, like, you know, like rip you in half fucking ghost, you know what I mean? Or stab you to death or, you know, whatever. I mean, we're not talking high art here, but, you know, we mentioned before in, you know, past episodes that, you know, not everything needs to be thought-provoking and, you know what I mean? This thing is a lot of fun.
Half the time William Castle was just having fun. And I feel like that, if that's what they were doing with the remakes, then that's good enough, you know?
Yeah, and the thing I respect about this one is that, like, you know, they really went deep. You know, obviously, like, you know, when it comes to like DVD special features and stuff like that, but like they kind of, you know, they kind of get into their origins when it comes to the actual movie, but like, you know, that fucking, those backstories for those ghosts are just like back to front, man. Like they put so much detail into those characters, into, you know, their origins, you know, how they died.
Mm-hmm.
There was a really, there was a lot of craft and love there in this movie. It's evident for sure. Yeah, it's just a fucking blast to watch. I can understand why people love that movie so much. And it definitely should be mentioned. Anything else on your list?
Yeah, just a final shout out. This is a film that I took a while to watch, but I wanted to go back and see it because it seemed important. As I think it was the first Japanese film to ever be nominated for an American Oscar, I want to say. Mm-hmm. Because well, the whole World War II thing kind of soured our relationship, as you know, as happens.
As is wont to do, yeah, for sure.
But there's a really, really gorgeous film from 1964 called Qui-Gon, mm-hmm. which is Qui-Gon is basically translated. It's an ancient way of saying ghost story. So mm-hmm. the name of the film is actually Ghost Story. It's an anthology film that I feel like it's different than any of the other films we talked about, not just because of its time period, but because it's almost not concerned with telling scary ghost stories, as opposed to, you know, recounting classic Japanese myths.
Yeah.
And that sounds boring, but the way this movie is filmed.
What? No.
The way this movie is filmed, like is just I've seen a few other Japanese films that look something like it, but this one just the most is that the colors and the set pieces and the cinematography, it feels as if you are watching a theater production up close, mm-hmm. you know, from the rafters. You're looking at people moving around doing a theater production, except there are no mistakes and no errors and no emergencies. It's just that surreal, and that suspension of disbelief is incredible. But these ghost stories are less about murdering and scaring people as they are about. They're not morality tales. They're classic folklore for a reason, and that they display, like, you know, certain values and all that. Like the first entry in the anthology, called The Black Hair, where we were talking about hair being a living entity earlier. Well, this actually relates to that. The first entry in the film, you know, concerns a samurai who is happily married to a wife, but they're poor. And the samurai decides to divorce his wife and go marry a rich girl. Basically because he's depressed with his lower status and wants wealth. And throughout the course of the story, he realizes his mistake and he regrets it. And he eventually, goes back to his old house and to his old wife. And he thinks he finds her, in the house, and she forgives him, and they have a big, heartfelt discussion, and they drink tea, and then they both fall asleep, and he wakes up and he realizes he's been talking to her corpse. And
what a twist!
he gets up and he freaks out and he tries to run away and tries to get out of the house, but the only thing left from her corpse is her black hair, and her black hair twists around him and keeps him there. As sort of a way to be like, you fucked up. You don't get a second chance, Wow. So that's sort of do you see what I mean? How it has a sort of different feel than a lot of American ghost stories. Like there's
it seems like they're more. It seems like they're more fables based on actual mythology as opposed to
that's fables. Fables is a good word. Or
as opposed to more fables as opposed to say a screenplay. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the second to last one is called Hoichi the Earless, which is about a mute musician who can famously chant and play a great epic, and he's so good at it that the court of the dead comes to summon him to get him to chant his epic to these dead people. And and what he doesn't know is that the priest tells him, these ghosts, they're gonna take you with them. They're gonna keep you as one of them, and they're gonna destroy you that way. We got to keep you safe. And so the last night before the ghosts come to take him away for the last night, the priest paints all the words of a holy poem all over him, including his face, but they forget his ears. And so the ghost comes to collect him, and because of the holy words written all over his body, he can't see him. All he can see is his ears.
Yeah.
And so he rips his ears off to take them back to his ghost king. And the name of the story is Hoichi the Earless.
Well, let's talk about one more before we enter James Wan territory, because that's pretty much where this is going. I did want to mention one real fast. I mean, first of all, I'm super stoked for Bly Manor. I can't wait to see.
For which one?
For Bly Manor, which is the pseudo sequel to Haunting of Hill House.
Okay.
Based on the Turning of the Screw.
Right.
I think if you guys are fans of this show, you know how I feel about Mike Flanagan. If there is a modern master that is alive and breathing right now to this day, Mike Flanagan is definitely one we're going to be talking about 30 years from now. And a lot of people don't talk about this movie. Really great cast, Karen Gillan. Based off of a short film that he did, which you can actually see online. But he did this film called Oculus, and it definitely deserves its praise, because first of all, you could see this movie and, just like you were mentioning, with Guillermo del Toro, you can look at this movie and go, oh yeah, this guy's got fucking.
This guy's got it. Yeah.
He's just gonna bring it. When it comes.
Well, I saw Mike Flanagan's very first film back in the day, Absentia.
I love Absentia too.
I thought it was incredible. I was like, wow, this is great stuff. This is going places.
Yeah. So the short film was basically just kind of, it was based off of this mirror that just went from place to place, and all these really horrible things happened. And this guy's, examining this mirror, and he's talking to himself in a recorder, and like, but it's so fascinating how it's done. You know what I mean? Like, it's not boring. It's just literally a guy in a room with a mirror, and just the way he plays with lights and imagery and all that stuff. I mean, it just works so well. So when he did the feature film for Oculus, he just did a movie that kind of spans time. So you have something that happened to these kids 11 years before, and then it gets into the present, where these kids are trying to dismantle, well, technically, literally just kind of dismantle this mirror, which is practically indestructible. And the thing I love about it is that you don't ever really know, there's no origin story for this mirror. You don't know where it came from. You don't know what it's made of. You don't know where you go, once you travel inside of it, you know what I mean? Or, what's coming out of it. It's just so awesome. It's so well done. So it involves this family that, just like any, kind of typical haunted house story, they buy something and they bring it into the house, which happens to be this mirror. And all this really wild stuff starts happening, within the home and stuff. And it also starts to affect the parents, to the point where, by the end of that particular, plot point, when it comes to them being kids, like, their mother's pretty much like a fucking feral animal by, like, by the time everything's said and done. And the father, chained her up in his office, and it's a whole thing. So they obviously have to defend themselves as kids. The brother character actually, goes off to, I don't know, I guess maybe, I can't remember if it's a boys' home or some sort of institution or something. So it gets back to them when they're adults. They go back to the house, and they got this whole fucking contraption set up, where they're eventually going to, dismantle this mirror and stuff. And then again, they go through all these situations where you see, images and faces, within the mirror, and all this really crazy stuff happens. And then just kind of the plot line when it comes to them being kids, he, spoilers, accidentally kills his sister, because they have a system to destroy this mirror, and it actually backfires, and it, it's pretty brutal. We're going to get into some James Wan territory now, and Leigh Whannell respectively, because he is part of at least one of these universes. And you know how we feel about Leigh Whannell.
We love him.
We love him. And of course, James Wan. I love James Wan very much.
James Wan rules.
Yeah, super. Very, very
and
much.
He is the undisputed king of horror right now.
Well, the other interesting thing about it, that I want to get into is that, I mean, you got something like Poltergeist, when it comes to like a family drama with a supernatural slant and all this other stuff. And, to Tobe Hooper's credit, fuck all the rumors. I don't care. That's Tobe Hooper's movie. The Friendling Family is such a well fleshed out family. Like, you actually felt like you were watching real people. I think that was the thing that worked out so much with Poltergeist, was that you actually give a shit about this family. And I think it's the same thing with Insidious. He really was trying to, give people a family drama, that, obviously, had some very human characters, but just like Poltergeist, you have this really intense, supernatural shit going on in the house. And the thing I really love about Insidious more than anything else was that it wasn't even just oh, there's a Native American graveyard, underneath the house, or there, there's a vortex in the closet or anything else. I don't think I've ever seen a story where a child is, becomes comatose and becomes a portal to this other world. That was
he's basically claimed. Yeah,
really original, and I love that about it. And obviously everybody else did too, because Insidious did really, really well.
Well, and not only does he become the portal, but it's almost like, his family, his father goes into basically goes into hell to bring him back, to save him, you know? And that's, it's not a new idea, but it's new for I feel like ghost stories.
When people say it's Poltergeist for the 2000s, it's definitely for a reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Patrick Wilson clearly loved working with James Wan and clearly loved doing ghosts, because he turned right around and did The Conjuring 3 years later.
Yeah.
And I love him for it.
Well, I got a couple more things to say about Insidious. And, you know, that's obviously where we're announcing our guest for the Dungeon of Deadly Delights podcast, episode 4. We're going to be talking to Lin Shaye, who, you know, this is a woman who had a really incredible career. You know, not only just being part of the Shaye empire, you know, the house that Freddie built, you know, when it comes to New Line Cinema and stuff, you know, she's just done it all. You know what I mean? She's like done everything, and, you know, everything but the kitchen sink. You know, of course, everybody, you know, knows the landlord from Kingpin. You know, what is about sex? It makes me have to crap, and, you know, all that stuff.
Her resume is intimidating.
It's intimidating.
Amazing.
But this movie made her bona fide horror queen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, you know, when it comes to the upper, you know, echelon people in horror, like, Lynn is up there because of Insidious. And, you know, and rightfully so, because her character of Elise Rainier is not only, like, you know, very human, you know what I mean? But, like, she comes off as so powerful, you know what I mean? Like, this is a woman who, you know, knows the supernatural world like the back of her hand, and, you know, kind of like the Tangier of the Insidious world, you know what I mean? Like, but also, you know, what was interesting about her is, like, you know, it's kind of got that, you know, that Ghost Hunters vibe too, you know what I mean? Because she's got the camera crew with her, of course, you know, played by Lee Winnell, and, you know, so you kind of got that modern slant to it. But, you know, like, you know, when it comes to her power and her abilities, I mean, you know, like, I mean, Christ, we went through, you know, 3 fucking movies, you know, proving that this character has, like, you know, so much staying power. And, you know, and also the other thing about, you know, Insidious, you know, like, I mean, that, you know, just the further just has become, you know, like, its own mythology. You know what I mean? Like, it's, you know, like, there's so many stories to tell within that, you know, in that world. There's so many, you know, so many demons and different creatures and stuff that you can pull from that. And I also love that the original Insidious doesn't have a happy ending at all. And and you know, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 spoilers, the fact that, you know, Patrick Wilson is, like, you know, possessed by this old woman who attacked him when he was a kid and ends up killing one of the stars. Like, it's like, wow, that was a choice. that was a definite choice. But yeah, you know, I think Insidious definitely had a lot to do with, you know, at least in the ghost genre, and, you know, Paranormal Activity, respectively. I think Insidious, you know, like, really kind of, you know, definitely, you know, injected new life into the world of ghost movies.
Yeah, agreed. I remember when I was watching Conjuring, I recall Insidious and how that combination of, like, the sort of Ghost Hunters meets Poltergeist, or Ghost Hunters meets, like, The Haunting, is seems to be really connecting with people. Mm-hmm. Like because it's like this really fun hybrid between mysterious ancient stuff and, hey, we're modern, we can figure this out, you know, like, right. I don't know, I find that fascinating, that it's sort of a hybrid genre now.
Well, I think what else is great about the Conjuring series, and just, you know, the Warrens in general. I mean, yeah, you know, a lot of people have their thoughts when it comes to them, you know, being con artists and they're lying or whatever, right? But they have such a legacy behind them the best story that I can tell you is that, like, when the first, I think it was actually The Conjuring. Was it The Conjuring 2? I can't remember, but I had actually contacted Lorraine Warren to hopefully like interview with her. And I'll put it up on the show, but you know, I'll screenshot it. But like I was, you know, I don't really get breathless when it comes to, you know, certain things, but the fact that she actually got back to me, that blew my mind. So she was, you know, like, unfortunately, my dear, I'm 98 years old, you know, you know, like I don't do interviews anymore, but, you know, like, you know, please get with my son. And, you know, even though it was a rejection, you know, she was so sweet, and it was just like, you know, love and light Lorraine. And I was just like, holy shit, like I actually spoke with Lorraine Warren. That's crazy. You know what I mean? There's just there's such a powerful aura to these two that, you know, like it was so fitting and perfect to put them, you know, on the big screen, you know, when it comes to the, you know, their cases and stuff. Like, you know, loving husband and wife that were together forever. You know, it's just, everything about it is just perfect, I think.
But the first film was very effective. And you're right. Part of the reason that I think people they connect with it was because the characters of Lorraine Warren they're not just your, you know, typical ghost hunters or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
they're people that you can connect with and follow from film to film. So
yeah, but even as real and human, you know, obviously as human as they are, you know, they're in love with each other, they have a child, you know, and this and that. Like, you know, there's such a lore and stuff that's, you know, like such a beautiful lore attached to them that it just so works so well on the big screen. And you know, and dare I say, you know, for my money, you know, when it comes to those two characters, when it comes to our genre, that's like, it's like watching the fucking Avengers or something. You know what I mean? Like, they're so big in scope, you know, for as human as they are. It's they're I mean, obviously they're two of the, you know, most important modern characters today, for sure, I would say. And then, of course, you know, from that we, you know, got the Conjuring universe that's just gonna go on and on.
Just keep going, man.
Mm-hmm. And there's even stuff that they were talking about, you know, doing, and they haven't done yet. You know what I mean? So there's so much you can do with that, and there's so much they have done with that. And it really just connects nicely in, you know, one big bow. Like you said, you know, if they wanted to connect Insidious and the Conjuring universe together, they absolutely could. James Wan's already got.
We'd have to have Patrick Wilson on screen with Patrick Wilson, mm-hmm. Which could be fun.
Yeah, you know, James Wan's got his own, you know, like he's got his own horror MCU.
Yeah, pretty much.
It really does.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, like at its core, you know, like the original Conjuring, you know, before it got into the, you know, the grand and scope stuff, you know, let's create a universe and all that shit, you know, as a simple film, it's super effective, and it's absolutely terrifying, I think. That you know, like, so, well, I think the initial idea that came from the reality of what happened to the Perron family was that Bathsheba was in love with the husband, and she was like trying to seduce him, and, you know, that's why she was, you know, trying to take the wife out of the picture or become the wife, or, you know, whatever. And you know, they swear up and down, those kids, like, you know, I've actually talked to a few of the daughters and stuff, like they swear up and down that this all happened. You know, the only thing that didn't happen was obviously, you know, like those, you know, sequential things actually happen through time. So like, you know, like not in a 2-hour wrapped up in a 2-hour film, but actually like, you know, 10 or 15 years of actually living in that house. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was just perfect fodder for, you know, for a really, really solid ghost story. So yeah, I guess that's it. So we, I think we buried all, you know, all the ghosts we can, and given them their freedom and their redemption and all that stuff. I don't know, Holly, is there anything else before we get off here?
No, I think so. I think I said it all at the top of the show that I know a lot of people who are very adamant that they've experienced ghostly happenings, and I have not, but I would love to.
I mean, again, like I haven't had one either, but yeah, I feel I'm in the same camp as you are. If it happened, I would be totally for it.
I'd be totally down. I'd be like, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so that's our episode, and be sure to join us for the podcast when we talk to Lin Shaye. I'm super excited for that, even though I've known Lin for a good part of my life, but it's still exciting nonetheless. Yeah, so you can catch that, like we said, on Stitcher and iTunes and Spotify and all that good stuff. And we'll scare you later. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.